Hey everybody, Sensei James Wall here, along with Coach Jacob Hardison. We're going to be going through the throwing techniques that are in Semester 5 of our Adult Judo curriculum. This will be the months of January through April. In this case, for us right now, January through April of 2019, but more importantly, it's going to be Semester 5 if you're working a rotating curriculum. So we're going to jump right into it. We'll get on these throwing techniques. The first one is Ko Sotogari, small outer reap. So, standard judo grip, both our right feet are forward. What I like to do is use my right foot and step sort of off the line or off of his center. So either lining my foot up just beyond his foot or maybe even a little further out from his foot. So I want to be able to have his leg, his foot come up in the air without my leg or body being in the way. My left leg is going to circle around to the outside, and then I want to make sure for this one I'm actually reaping. So I'm actually lifting up the bottom of his leg and pushing his body over. So I lift as I throw him down. Now again, as we say in all of these videos, we're showing the basic, fundamental instructional way of doing it. We're not covering 6 or 8 different variations of it. This is one way to do it, and I find this to be a really good way for novices when they're first learning this technique. So again, we'll step off the line, reap, and push him down. So Ko Sotogari, small outer reap. So the next throw is very, very similar to that. It's Ko Sotogake, the small outer hook or dash. And so I really emphasized on the first one how we lift the leg up. We knock the leg out from under him while we push the top over. In this case with the gake, we're going to actually trap his leg so he can't lift it up while we shove the top over. So we can do these two techniques in exactly the same way. The only difference is what I do with my leg, a gari or a reap versus a gake or a hook. So again, I'll step just slightly off the line. This time when my left leg comes around, it's not going to reap his leg out. I'm going to actually put my toes or ball of my feet to the ground and trap his leg there. So I trap here, holding his leg so he can't step backwards. And then I use my upper body to push and shove him down. So Ko Sotogake, small outer hook or dash. What we're going to look for promotional testing purposes between the gari and the gake. For the gari, we're going to want to see your leg reap or lift his leg. For the gake, we're going to want to see your toes or the ball of your foot actually make contact with the mat. You don't have to be flat-footed, but we want to see some contact with the mat as you push him over for Ko Sotogake. Next technique, Koshiguruma, the hip wheel. So for Koshiguruma, basic fundamental way would be for me to get my right arm around his neck, hips across in front of his body, use my knees to lift, then wheel him from one side over to the other. So for promotional purposes, not only is the grip different from Ogoshi, but one thing we look for to differentiate these is for it to be a guruma or wheel, I'm actually kind of throwing him from my left hip to my right hip. So he's actually crossing over from hip to hip, as opposed to maybe just throwing him across the side of my right hip like I would do for a right-sided Ogoshi. Sometimes if you're having a hard time with this, you can have your uke step backwards for you, so you actually step in front of him at kind of a steep angle. So we'll actually come this way just a little bit more. So if Jacob takes a step back, if I step in with him with my left foot and then let my right foot drive across along with my hand here, then this gives me a really good idea of what it looks like. Notice his legs are on this side of my body now, but I'm going to throw him over to that side. So again, Koshiguruma, hip wheel, controlling the neck, use the knees just to lift a little bit. That's going to vary depending on the height of your partner, of course. Jacob's my height or close to my height. I don't have to bend my knees quite as much. Remember, if your uke is shorter than you still want to get your belt below their belt, just like in most of our other hip throws. Next technique is Taiotoshi, the body drop. For this technique, I'm going to show 2 different grips that are acceptable for basic standard testing purposes. The first being the standard normal grip, and the other being what we call a 2-on-1 grip. So for Taiotoshi here, judo grip, right foot forward, I'm going to put my right foot in the center, and my left foot is going to step around backwards, so I'm standing beside him. So I step here, and I want my hip very close to his hip. I'm not way out like this, but I'm also not blocking his hip. It's not a hip throw. I want to be real close. Right foot is going to shoot out, and my toes are going to go down. And I want my calf muscle touching his shin. And one thing that we stress for safety reasons here at our school is for me to make sure my toes are down, so my knee is pointed at the mat. If this throw happens to go wrong and he falls on my leg can bend in a normal manner. It'll hurt, but it's not going to damage me. And the second thing, I want to make sure that my leg touches his leg, but it's below his knee. I can feel his knee is right there. What I don't want to do is I don't want to use my leg to lock out or hyperextend his knee and then force him forward. That's going to possibly do a lot of damage to his knee. So for testing purposes, what we're going to be looking for here is toes down, my leg touching his leg, deep, deep knee bend for me, and making sure my knee, my leg are both below his leg as I bring him forward. I want to keep both my elbows in close to my body, and remember, I don't want to throw him away from me, I want to throw him forward right there. So let's kind of see what that looks like at about half speed. 1, 2, toes down, deep knee bend, elbows in tight, I pull forward here. So that's going to be our basic Thai Otoshi. Now, that grip can sometimes be difficult, particularly for guys like me, long arms. Having this grip, when we step in, let's take a little bit of an angle. When we step in, sometimes we feel sort of jammed up here in our shoulder and wrist area. And there's a tendency to want to straighten out, and that pushes him away from us, and it robs a lot of power from your throw. So one acceptable option, if you're having a hard time with that, is to use my right hand and take the other side of the lapel, what we call a 2-on-1 grip. Some fingers in here, and I've still got my sleeve grip here. Let's take a little angle again. So for me at least, this usually takes some of the pressure off of my shoulder and my elbow and wrist. This feels more comfortable and stronger for me as I pull forward and make the throw. So either of those grips, either of those versions will be acceptable for testing purposes. We're going to see a third version of that for the advanced players, brown belts and up, later on in this video. All right, last throw that we have for the novices and the advanced is Ko Uchi Gake. This throw can be called a couple of different things depending on who you're talking to. Some people call it Ko Uchi Gake, the small inner hook or dash. Some people call it Ko Uchi Makikomi. It's also affectionately known by a lot of people as the giant killer. So in your senior judo handbook, you'll see Ko Uchi Gake, small inner hook, and then I also in parentheses put giant killer and also known as Ko Uchi Makikomi. So here at our school, we typically refer to this as Ko Uchi Gake. So for this throw, what I'm going to do is get my right leg between his legs and then hook it around his forward or his right leg. And my right arm is going to drop down on the outside. So what I'm really wanting to do is hug his leg. My leg hugs on the inside, and my arm is going to trap it on the outside, and then I'm going to keep it trapped while I use my body to force his upper half over. Remember, it's a gake, meaning I trap the bottom and knock the top over. It's not a gari. I'm not kicking his leg out from under him. So to really do this one against a resisting opponent, you definitely would have to do a grip break here. So we're going to grip break. My right foot comes in as I fencer step. Right leg is going to hook around the inside. Right arm shoots across. So my right arm grabbing by his calf. My right leg is on the inside. And I want to be sure I push and kind of use my shoulder and body weight to drive it down here. Now, for randori and shiai purposes, you really want to work on this technique so that you're not hitting and then rolling here and giving up your back so you can start choking you and things like that. So you're going to want to either fall in such a way that you're immediately passing his guard, or at the very least, you're falling and able to establish your own base inside his closed guard. You don't want to give up your back. We don't want to assume in a tournament situation that it's going to be any pawn. We don't want to assume in a self-defense situation that one throw is going to knock the person out. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. What we don't want in either situation is another person on our back trying to choke us. So let's do that one more time. All right, so Ko Uchi Gake, small inner hook or dash. All right, I'm going to give Coach Jacob a break, bring out Coach Jordan. We're going to cover a couple of techniques now that are in this semester. They are specifically for the advanced players. So this is going to be brown and up. So everyone, all ranks above white belt, need to do the 5 we just demonstrated. Brown and up also need to show these. So I got Coach Jordan here to help me out. First one is going to be a follow through from that Ko-Uchigake we just did. This is not one that I would necessarily recommend, maybe not in a grappling or jiu-jitsu situation. In a judo match situation, you can probably do it and get away with it, maybe in self-defense. Basically what I'm going to do is the Ko-Uchigake, and as I fall, I'm going to tuck my head and shoulder and then just keep rolling over, kind of to get up and get out of there if I wanted to. So the technique is going to be exactly the same. I'm going to go slow motion to start with. I'm going to fencer step and hook, drive across. As he falls and I fall, I'm going to tuck and roll across my right arm and shoulder. So I tuck and continue my roll across like that. Now maybe it was self-defense, I threw him really fast, I got up and ran away, or maybe I'm really confident that this throw is going to get me any pawn. I don't want to take the chance of ground fighting with him, so I just roll and I pop right back up. So again, same technique, hit, tuck, and then just keep rolling over to get out of there. All right, second technique for the advanced players, Tai Otoshi, and we mentioned earlier a third version. This is what we call the elbow fold-in. So earlier we covered Tai Otoshi. We used our standard grip. We used our 2-on-1 grip. So this time, our uke has his strong grip here. Maybe I wasn't able to break his grip for a competition-style entry. So instead of using his lapels, I'm going to take my forearm and I'm going to push here to bend his elbow, kind of break it down. Remember, we cannot strike his elbow in judo. It's not a striking technique. In self-defense, yes, tournament judo, we can't do that even in freestyle, but I can push hard or push with a purpose. So everything else about the throw is the same. I still step here, turn, toes down, deep knee bend. My leg is below his knee. Everything is in close and tight to my body. So I use my torso, my midsection, and my upper body to push this forearm as I pull and throw forward. So again, everything else is the same. Foot placement, leg placement, body placement, but I'm using this forearm against his elbow. Now you could still do this even if he didn't have his grip. Even if I managed to break his grip, I could still enter and set up and push just like this to throw Tai Otoshi. But it is a really good way to do it if they've got that power hand grip and you haven't been able to break it. All right, the last technique that we've added for the advanced players this semester is Ude Gaishi. It's the arm reversal. It's a technique you don't see done very often. I know we don't get to work on it all that often, but it's a cool technique for upper ranks to play with. Now, this can be done a lot of different ways. It can be done against the right arm or the left arm. I'm going to be throwing it versus his left arm. That's the way that I throw it. Some of my guys do it against the right arm, and that's perfectly fine as well. So we'll take a little bit of an angle here so we can see this. So in this instance, maybe he's presented as a left-sided fighter, got his left foot forward, and he's been trying to obtain this power hand grip. So what I've managed to do is secure his sleeve with my left hand, and I've managed to take my right hand and go over his tricep, and I'm grabbing his gi here underneath his bicep tricep area. So we can straighten that up a little. So basically I've got this grip, and we're both kind of fighting with a little bit of an extreme stance here, right? So we're not necessarily sideways fully, but we're certainly not squared up with each other. You know, he's been sort of fighting me with extreme left, and I've, in response to that, been fighting kind of an extreme right. So my left leg is back maybe a little bit further than if I was just here starting to play. So I've got the grip here, got the grip here. I'm going to let my body turn underneath and basically do a side fall out here beside him. But as I go, what I'm going to be doing is twisting his arm, twisting his arm, twisting his arm. And I want to make him want to do a forward roll or a forward fall. So I'm going to go real slow with this one at first. So my right foot steps out, and then my left leg comes through. And I basically do a side fall here. As I go, I start twisting my upper body and twisting his arm forward, 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 until I bring him over like that. So let's see it again at kind of normal speed. All right, so a fun one to play with. Again, it's Ude Gaishi, the arm reversal. You advanced ranks, feel free, as always, to kind of learn the basic version and then experiment. Try it on different arms, try different grips, slightly different entries. You have the ability as advanced ranks to do more than one way. And that's kind of the basic fundamental way, though. If you don't know the throw at all, that's the way to start working on it. All right, for this semester, we only have 2 techniques that are counters, defenses, or combinations. In this case, they're both defenses, or counters. It's going to be Tani Otoshi when our partner attacks us with that Koshi Garuma that we saw earlier in the video. So I'll have Coach Jordan here. If he steps in to throw Koshi Garuma on me, what I'm going to do is let my left leg drop right behind his body. Like it's a log I want him to trip over. My left hand needs to grab him somewhere. That could be his collar. I can bear hug him here, grab the side of his belt, back of his belt, grab the top of his shoulder. Whatever works for you and feels comfortable for you. So I like to grab here if I can, and if I can't, just bear hug around their body. This is kind of my preferred grip though. My left leg drops, and it's important as I fall, falling on my side, not my back. And I want to really project or throw him that way. I want to steer him to land on his back while I land on my side. So don't put your leg into his knee. It's not a reap. I'm dropping. My leg goes, my leg goes all the way to the mat as I turn and project downward with him. So ideally I should be able to hit and then immediately do a hip switch either into a Keisa Gatame or possibly a Mune Gatame or Yoko Shio Gatame. So from here I could just switch my hips, boom, and come right into a modified chest hold, switch out to a Yoko Shio Gatame if I wanted to. So for safety reasons, again, the thing we really look for with this is when he comes in, don't put your legs here. We're not reaping, okay? My leg drops, don't put your hand out. It's okay if you want to kind of brace, land on your elbow just a little bit to protect your partner if you're working with them, if you're not using a crash pad. But if you're doing it for real, we want to put them down as hard as possible. So you'll notice I'm sort of making an L and kind of bracing myself here so I'm not throwing Coach Jordan as hard as possible. Leg goes out as I turn in and face him, trying to go chest to chest. Okay? The last technique is another counter technique. In this case, the opponent has attacked us with Kosoto Gake, one of the throws we did earlier in this set, the small outer hook. And I'm going to counter that with Uchimata. In my case, I'm specifically going to do Kin-Kin Uchimata, the hopping or jumping Uchimata, because it gives me more control over when I throw my partner. For purpose of promotion, you could do regular Uchimata, blasting them, or it could be this Kin-Kin version. So let's try that from this side, and we may have to turn around. The cameraman will let me know here. So Coach Jordan steps, and he performs the small outer hook. So he's got his leg right behind mine. So what I'm going to do in response to that, instead of getting involved in this power struggle back and forth, my left leg is going to take just a really small step back here on the ball of my foot, and then my right leg is going to reap upward, and I use my upper body. I'm going to lift your leg and stop, Coach. So I lift for Uchimata here, and I like the Kin-Kin version. I like to hop in at an angle as I finish the throw. Now again, you don't have to do that. It could be that as soon as his leg wraps around yours, you immediately hit full speed Uchimata, and that works just fine as well. Using the Kin-Kin version is really good if you and your partner, or maybe just your partner, is kind of new at this. If they're not comfortable falling for Uchimata, maybe if you're not comfortable throwing Uchimata without landing on them, it just gives you more control. You can sort of decide when to throw them, even roll out of it if you need to. All right, so that the throwing techniques and also counters and defenses for this semester in our adult judo curriculum. All right, we're going to cover the pins and the escapes and then the choking techniques or shimewaza for semester 5 in the adult judo curriculum. Coach Jordan's going to help me out with that. So first, we're going to do the pins. The first one is going to be Ushiro Keisa Gatame, the reverse scarf hold. You can go straight into this. One way that I like to do it and teach it is starting in Kamishiho Gatame and then switching in. So I'll show just going straight into it and then show switching from Kamishiho. So I'll have Coach Jordan on his back, his head's toward me. So for Ushiro Keisa, in this case, I'm going to be here on his side, and I'm going to sit with my legs facing outward and my head looking at his feet. So it's Keisa Gatame, but it's the reverse. I'm looking the reverse direction. So his arm here will be in my lap, across my stomach, and I'm trapping it underneath my armpit. My right arm, I can either have the elbow in his armpit, holding his belt or pants, or I could encircle his shoulder and go here. This is sort of what we see as kind of the textbook version of it, where I've got my arm underneath his shoulder. This hand could be cupping, or of course it could be grabbing some gi material, and I'm pulling tight, maintaining some pressure down here on his chest, the legs out nice and wide. So again, another way that I like to do it is to start here in kami shiho, where I've got my arms under both sides of his shoulders, and then my left arm, I'll just bring it out, and I'll go over, and I'll use it to scoop his arm up, and then I'll just do a sit through here into the Ushiro Kesa Gatame. So either way, you end up here, reverse scarf hold. So we're going to rotate toward the camera and have Coach Jordan do his escape in this one. Right about here. So what he's going to do is throw both of his feet to one side for his bridge. He's going to use both of his arms, going to really grab my body hard and tight. He's going to bridge his hips up and push over his shoulder like that. So it's definitely just a bridge and roll. Still works just as well, even though I'm facing the opposite direction. Let's do it one more time with your head going toward the feet like this. I'm sorry, Coach. Nice jump there. That's my fault. Here. So again, his legs go to one side, the opposite side. Legs here because he's going to bridge in that direction. And notice how he's really using his upper body. His arm on this side is clamping and holding me tight. It's also kind of controlling my shoulders, so it's harder for me to post out with it. And he's going to make sure this arm is not dead. It's not just going to lay here. He's going to push or drive as he bridges. So he pushes and bridges up and over, which puts him in a nice modified upper four-corner hold. All right, second technique this semester we're focusing a lot on is Tate Shiho Gatame, top locking four-corner hold. So in this case, called full mount in some circles. So I'm on top, and I'm going to use my feet to grapevine his legs, and we'll show that from another angle in just a second. And for this particular one, I'm going to have my right arm behind his head. It could be either arm. A lot of times we will also try to get this shoulder in and control it. This makes for a very, very tight Tate Shiho. It can also make this start to be a choking technique. It's not absolutely necessary to have this in for it to be Tate Shiho. As long as I'm on top of him and I've got my chest down on his chest and holding him here, this would be Tate Shiho Gatame. This is the version we're going to use this semester and we're going to use for our escape. So he's going to trap the arm that's behind my head, kind of like he's brushing his hair. He doesn't want me to be able to put that hand out and post. Now, I've got a grapevine on his legs, so he needs to free one of them. In this case, he's got this arm trapped. He's going to want to bridge in that direction. So he needs to free the opposite leg. He does that by kicking straight up and then stomping straight down. Now, as he bridges, notice again, this arm is not dead. He's going to push with it. He's going to drive under my armpit as he makes his bridge. So he goes up and over all the way, just like that. And you may have noticed also what he did with the other leg of his is he made sure he had my foot also trapped so that I couldn't maybe post out with it. So let's see that with our heads actually facing away so you guys can see exactly what he does with his feet and legs. Bend over. All right, so again, that's just our basic textbook version of the pin and also of the escape for Tate Shiho Gatame, top locking four-corner hold. For the novice ranks, really for all ranks this semester, you have those two pins and escapes, and we have these two choking techniques. We have Nami Juji Jime or Nami Juji Jimmy, the normal cross choke. These can be done from a variety of positions. I usually like to see them demonstrated from top mount and or from the guard. I'll do them on my back with him and my guard first. So I'm on my back and he is here in my full guard. So we have three cross chokes. They're almost the same. The only difference is whether or not thumbs are inside his collar or fingers are inside the collar. Nami is the normal, and the normal means both thumbs are inside. So I'm going to put this thumb inside his lapel, and I want the knife edge of my hand actually making contact with his neck. So I'm going to be real close like that, real tight, not out here with lots of slack. So I make contact there, thumb inside. This hand can go over or under. We typically teach to go under. That way your forearm and wrist can help you to raise his chin if he's trying to tuck it. I could use that to kind of lift his chin up. And I want this thumb to also go in. And again, I'm super deep So the knife edge on both sides of my hands are actually touching into his neck. So if you notice from this position, my wrists are both bent inward. Once I have the position and grip, I should be able just to flex my wrists, and that pulls the slack out of the gi and causes my hands to close inward. I shouldn't have to use a lot of elbow strength. If you're very, very loose in the lapels, the looser you are in the lapels, the more you'll have to use your elbows. So if you find yourself having to pull way, 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 way down to make this work, maybe you try to get a little tighter in your initial grip if you can do that. The opponent doesn't always let you do that, but if you can, that's what you want to do. So we go thumb inside, shoot the hand underneath, thumb inside. I'm going to straighten my wrist and execute the choke just like that. Let's do that with me on top real fast, just in case you need to see that other angle of it. So again, he's here. I'm going to be in tate shiho. So the thumb goes inside, knife edge goes in, hand can go over the top, like we see in kata, or underneath, thumb also in, and again, I simply straighten my wrists here to execute the choking technique. All right, our last, right there, 1-2 coach, actually, the last one is going to be kata jame, shoulder choke. So it's also called an arm triangle, and there's a lot of different ways to get into it. For promotional purposes, this is kind of what we want to see you do. You're going to start out in either tate shiho gatame and switch into this, or you're going to start out in the PM we call kata gatame, the shoulder hold. So if I were in tate shiho, and as I mentioned earlier, slide back just a little bit, as I mentioned earlier, we could increase the pin by bringing his arm across his face, and I'm putting this part of my body between my neck and shoulder on his tricep. My right arm is around behind his head. Typically for the pin, we would simply hold our hands together here and clasp them tightly. To make this tighter and more of a choking technique, we could take this hand and place it inside our own elbow. And then we use that elbow to start pulling up as we force the arm in deeper. And so his arm and shoulder are making a choke on this side, while my forearm is making a choke on that side. So sometimes we start here, we can't quite finish it, so we might even bring a leg up and then go belly down here and use our hips to push back and bring more pressure to bear. Okay? We might also start here in kata gatame, the shoulder hold, and switch into kata jame, the shoulder choke. So any of those versions would be okay, thank you coach, for promotional purposes. And again, those are just sort of the basic standard ways of doing it. There are lots of other versions. We're only interested in this video in kind of showing some fundamental basic ways you guys can work on for promotion purposes. Again, advanced ranks, you're going to want to play with these techniques and find your own ways to kind of modify them and specialize them just for your body type and your particular style that you know. All right, so that covers pins and escapes and choking techniques for semester 5 of the adult curriculum. Okay, we're going to now cover the joint locking techniques and then move into the miscellaneous mat work techniques for semester 5 in our adult judo curriculum. So we're going to start out with a joint lock called ude gatame. This is the arm or shoulder arm lock. And for promotional purposes, we're going to want to see everyone do it in 2 different positions. Standing and then also on the ground where you're on your back and your partner or opponent is in your guard. So we're already standing up. We'll start with the standing version. So I'm going to say in this case that maybe Jacob has reached out to grab my collar here. Maybe even better, maybe he's grabbed kind of a rear collar grip. That would make it even easier for me. What I'm going to want to do is keep his arm as straight as possible or pull it straight. I'm going to get control of his forearm and wrist area, and I'm going to roll his arm over. I'm going to trap it here with my head and my shoulder. What I want to do is get his elbow so it's facing upward. And there's a lot of different finishes here. Let's actually turn around for just a second. So again, what I'm doing is I'm rolling this arm, trapping it in place. I want his elbow facing up. Depending on which instructor you talk to or which style of martial arts you're looking at, there's different things to do to execute the finish to the lock. Some people just grab the elbow as they roll and hold it, and then simply use both hands to push straight down, which works great. I was taught in Aikido to make a Y and place it there and then push that down because it makes it kind of a more precise, like a knife cutting in. I've also been taught that you can just come across with the forearm and pull down here, or even hug it with 2 arms here. So there's a multitude of different ways to do this, from judo to Japanese jiu-jitsu to aikido to Brazilian jiu-jitsu to hapkido. It really doesn't matter a lot to me as long as you fundamentally are doing the correct technique. Make sure you're rolling his arm so the elbow is up, using your head and your shoulder to trap his arm and wrist a little bit to make it hard for him to pull away. And then you want to execute this lock by pushing down on the joint, but also by bending your knees. What we really don't want you to do for promotional purposes is we don't want to see you bending your body. So what we don't want you to do is to roll it and then start trying to do this type of thing. That just really puts you in an awkward, off-balance position. So I'm going to roll it. In this case, I'll just use my palm of my hands on it here. And I just want to push down, and I want him going down a little faster than I'm going down. So I sort of do this at an angle, but I definitely start to bend my knees to apply more downward pressure. If you need to, you can also sugiyashi step. You'll see us do it like that in Goshin Jitsu Kata. Maybe I need to stretch his arm out more, or maybe I don't get the lock fast enough, so I feel like he's going to move into me and counterattack me. So I'll roll him here, and I'll step back as I lower him down more and more to execute the lock. All right, so that's the standing version of Ude Gatami. Next, we'll see it from the ground. So I'm here on my back, and he's in my guard. So in this case, maybe he's got his hands right here, kind of on my stomach and hips to establish his posture and his base. So one way I can do this is what we call shooting the triangle. So I'm going to let my right arm shoot right underneath here. Sort of makes a triangle. Anywhere he puts his hand, there's a triangle of some shape there. So I'm going to sort of sit up, and I'm going to shoot this arm underneath there and hug his arm and shoulder. So I shoot through. And I like to grab, kind of a gable grip. And as I pull his body down, I'm going to start moving out and onto my left side. So I'm not just falling here. We're kind of jammed up here. So instead, as I fall, I move out to my side here. And that allows me to work my way out and see his wrist and arm fall right into position here on my shoulder so I can trap it. What I've also done now is made a lot of space here so I can use my hands to push his elbow down into that space. Sometimes you have to find that elbow and roll it and make sure it's pointed in the right direction. His arm might over-rotate one way or the other. So as long as you have it here and using your legs to trap him, you have plenty of time. Pull out strong to straighten it out, execute your elbow lock right there. Ude Gatami, arm or shoulder, arm lock. And for everybody, all ranks, we're going to want to see those two versions of it. Let's see, for advanced players, I believe we also added Ude Garami from Ushiro Keisagatami. It's one of my favorite techniques to do. It's really, really easy to get. So earlier in this video for semester 5, we demonstrated the reverse scarf hold, Ushiro Keisagatami. So I'll have Coach Jacob here on his back with his feet pointing away from me, head toward me, go. And so I'm just going to get into this, turn just a little bit of it. Right, there we go. We get in this Ushiro Keisagatami position here. In this case, I'm over his body, got my elbow into his armpit, but it could also be with this arm underneath his shoulder. It works fine either way. So I've got my right leg really far forward, so my thigh ends up right under his tricep. So I'm going to just use this hand. If you notice, if I start to push his arm down, it's in the same position as it would be for us to do Ude Garami in the upper position from side control. So I've got what I need here, trap his elbow and bicep tricep to my inner thigh. A lot of times we can just use our hand and maybe our upper body and we can just push enough to execute the lock. If that's not enough, you can bring this leg up, trap it here. Push down here while you lift up there. And that executes a really nasty Ude Garami or entangled arm lock here from this position. So this is a really sneaky technique. Seems very simple, but I have a lot of success catching people with it in Randori. Deceptively easy to get if you can get that Ushiro Keisa position. Our next joint lock for advanced players is actually going to be a knee bar. And like we said in previous videos, we include wrist locks and ankle locks and knee locks in this curriculum, just a few of them, just so our judo students will kind of have a basic understanding of lower body submissions and small joint submissions. Remember that leg locks, knee locks, ankle locks, wrist locks, those are never illegal in judo, including freestyle judo. So you can't do this in a judo competition, but it's one of these things that as a grappler, particularly moving like to a brown belt, black belt level in a grappling style like judo, you should at least have a basic understanding of submissions for the entire body, small joints, and also the lower body. So this particular time it's going to be a knee bar. I'm going to start out in the floating hold, or ukigatami, what's also commonly called the knee on belly position. So Coach Jacob's on his back with his head toward the camera. And there's a lot of different ways to do knee on belly. In this case, I'm going to have my right hand, my lower hand, gripping his pants here. I've got my knee right across his torso, and my left hand is kind of just grabbing here. I might be at the rear of his collar, or I might just be here by his shoulder. And I'm executing this floating hold or knee on belly. Now you can get this technique even if he doesn't start to turn toward you, but I find it works particularly well if the opponent is trying to turn toward me and maybe he's trying to get his legs here between us so he can make some space and kind of reestablish the guard. So if I'm here and he starts kind of trying to move away from me, you see how his leg kind of starts to maybe come up a little bit. So I could take that knee bar in this direction or in that direction. I'm going to go across his body for the first one. So my lower arm releases and I'm going to hook here behind his knee, hold it tight. And then I'm going to just pop up and let my left leg step over. And I want my leg to go right by his hip. So typically I'll pop up and step all the way around. And I want to try to sit my hips butt down as close to him as I can here. So really I want my upper body not here, but as much beside him as possible. So that way, if I pull his toes to my head, I'm hyperextending his knee. We need to do something about that leg so he can't just throw it over and try to climb on top of us. There's a lot of different things you can do there. What I like to do is squeeze my knees together here and then put one foot on it and then just make an X with the other foot. So I kind of hook it like that as I pull straight back to my shoulder and execute that knee lock. So another option you do have is, instead of going across the body, to actually sit on him here and fall here. So I could be executing my floating hold or knee on belly here. As I grab this leg, I could just let this knee shoot straight across here and then fall back to here and execute my knee bar on this side as well. So either one of those is acceptable. I typically step all the way over, but it's completely up to you. Try them both. Either one will be acceptable for promotion purposes. Okay, let's move right into miscellaneous mat work. Let me check with my camera guy. Are we okay on time? All good? Okay. All right, so let's move right into our miscellaneous mat work. So, got some guard passes here. This first set is for everyone to work. First is going to be the swinging leg guard pass. So I'll have Coach Jacob here on his back, headed toward the crash pads. I'll be in his guard. So if his guard is open, I can go right into this technique. If his guard is fully closed, then obviously I'll need to open his guard. Remember all the basic principles we talk about. Wide base, good posture. Short arms, got control of his hips by pressing downward here. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to go ahead and open his guard and start setting up for this pass. My right hand, I'm going to just kind of grab his pants right here. I could also grab his belt or his gi. I'm going to grab his pants and I'm going to use this forearm and elbow here. I'm not trying to open up his guard, but I want to keep control of this leg. And then I'll bring my right knee center of his body so that I can step back and open this gate up here. And again, I'm using this to maintain control of his hips and this to kind of keep that leg under control. All right. For the swinging leg guard pass, I'm now going to swing this arm underneath, bring this up, get control of it here. Stack him up a little bit and let my hand grab thumb inside on his lapel here and pop behind like that. So let's see that with his head toward the camera. So I want to show one thing with this shoulder shrug. So once I get his knee to here, I'm going to stack him up, grab here. When I stack fully, I'm not going to move backwards and try to duck around his leg. And I don't really, even though we call it a swinging leg pass, I don't need to try to throw it super hard. What I am going to do is put some pressure, and then I'll walk, and then I'll just kind of shrug my head and shoulder and let that leg pop by. So if we put enough pressure on that leg forward, when we shrug, his own body will kind of work against him and he'll sort of spring back in the other direction. So good control, half stack. Remember, control his upper body here. Okay, that's our swinging leg guard pass. Next is going to be our stacks guard pass. All right, so this time he's got his head away from me again. Again, if the guard was closed, I need to open it. We're just going to start here, open guard, just for the sake of time and simplicity on the video. Where I want to end up is with both arms going through, circling around on his thighs, and I'm going to pull his body onto my thighs, or maybe I lift him slide my thighs under his body. Doesn't really matter, but I want to end up here like this with his hips off the ground if I can get it. Squeeze the legs tight together. I don't want him out like this. It makes it tougher on me. He'll really start fighting me here. So I squeeze together tight. Put some pressure. Let my thumb again grab inside his collar. Walk to the side. And again, just a little shrug while those legs fly by. Next is what we call the key lock pass versus the half guard. So I'll have him put his head toward the camera for this one. He's going to have my right leg caught here in this half guard position. So in this case, when we say key lock, we're actually going to be using his gi underneath his armpit to hold his arm in this ude garami position. A lot of people refer to this as a key lock. So that's where this name came from, the key lock pass. It's not actually an arm lock, so we're not really trying to submit him. We're just going to use the gi to restrict his movement and hopefully keep his body down on one spot on the mat so he can't sit up. So I'll put some pressure on his upper body, make sure my leg here is out to the side for base, and I'll put this arm behind his head. I'm going to use my right hand to pull his lapel out here, and I'm going to drive some slack under this armpit and give it to this hand. Now it's important to grab as high as I can. When I start pulling here, I really want to affect him a lot. So if I grab the bottom of his lapel and I've got this, then I'm really not doing anything. There's too much slack there. So I really want to get as high as I can and make this as tight as possible. So this is not completely immobilizing his arm, but it is limiting his mobility. It also gives me a rope around this shoulder. So for my next step, what I'm going to do is leg out and hip switch here so I can look at his legs. If he tries to sit up now, I've got that to pull against him as well as that to stop. And now I can start working to free that leg. Of course, they're never going to make it super easy to free that leg. Sometimes you have to really work for it. But if we have his upper body completely tied up and it's control of his upper body here, so I can push away like this. Sometimes we can actually start to slice here, slice across all the way for tate shiho, or we can grab here, and I'm going to pull hard and fast this way while my leg kicks that way. So they have to be a snapping motion together like that. And then I can drag the toes, use that to drive them back across, and just hold on to this as part of your pin. Okay? All right, so that's our key lock pass versus the half guard. We have one more miscellaneous mat work technique that are for kind of the novice section that everyone has to practice. This is called the double ankle sweep. So in this case, I'm on my back, and my partner is in my guard and stands up the wrong way, or maybe he was already standing and he got a little too greedy and got a little too careless and let his feet get too close to my hips. What we're looking for here is a situation where I'm on my back and his feet are here and here. They're both roughly equidistant and they're close to my hips. They don't necessarily have to be exactly even. You know, one could be a little bit behind the other, but the point here is he's let his feet get too close to me. Okay? So it could be that we were here kind of fighting this open guard scenario and he makes the mistake of stepping forward there to maybe try to stack me up or something. So I realized that. So I grab here, same thing on the other side, got my right foot already on his hip, my left foot goes to this hip. It's important here, I'm not kicking him, and I have heard of someone getting disqualified because the referee felt that they kicked their opponent from here. You don't have to lift this guy up in the air. If you're holding his ankles and heels here, if you just give him a little tiny push, he'll go right over. And that's what we're looking for. So you can do it fast, of course, in a tournament setting, but you don't have to be explosive and lift his feet off the ground. So for promotion purposes, if possible, physically if you can do it, we really want to see the person here doing the sweep get up and move into a pin. Don't just lay here, okay? So I'm going to go here and here. As I push, as he falls, I'm going to pop up as fast as I can. If I can go over the top, I will. If I end up having to pass his guard, I'll do that. If I get stuck in the half guard, that's okay too. I can work to pass that. So in freestyle judo, as long as we keep him on the ground and we get up, then we're going to get a point for that sweep. If I push him down and I just lay there and he rolls over and gets up, and I either stay on the ground or I roll over and get up, it doesn't count for anything. I need to establish control, so I need to keep him down after that sweep. All right, so that's the double ankle sweep. So that's the last miscellaneous mat work technique that everyone has to cover. We got a few more for the advanced players. I'm gonna give Coach Jacob a break. I'll bring Coach Jordan out here and we'll wrap these things up. So, first technique for the advanced side of things, miscellaneous mat work, we call a stack and flip. Stack and flip. So it's kind of a carryover or carry on to the stacks guard pass that we saw earlier. So in this case, I'm in his guard again. Now, for this one, you can start here in the stack and actually use this. But what I prefer to do is get my grips on his belt, kind of at the back of his hips. It doesn't have to be all the way behind him, but I am grabbing either at the center of his hips or slightly back. And I'm still pulling him up tall. Now, to take care of your partner, don't take him straight back. So I'm not going to lift Coach Jordan up and take him straight over. That's going to really put his neck in a lot of pressure. I'm going to pick a direction. I'm going to either go at an angle here or at an angle there. That way he can tuck his head, kind of do an over-the-shoulder back roll, and I don't hurt my partner a lot, okay? If you're going to do stack and flip, you need to be prepared to follow through. So in other words, don't just stack and flip. He's going to end up in the turtle, and you get nothing for that. So you either want to be prepared to attack him for a choke or an arm bar, spin around, take his back, work for a turnover. You want to do something. So for promotional purposes, remember, we want to see you stack and flip, and then at least start attacking in position. You don't necessarily have to finish it, but you can't just stay here. So look, I'm going to lift up his hips tall. I'm going to take him to that corner. So what I like to do is pop that knee up to use a little extra lifting power. So I'm going to lift, flip him right over. Usually they go right here, turtled up on all four. Occasionally, very occasionally, you do it fast enough, they'll hit and actually sprawl out on their stomach. That doesn't happen very often though, especially not at the brown belt or black belt level. So usually here. If you pause for very long at all, he's either going to grab a leg and start doing like a single leg from the ground, or at the very least, he's going to spin on his butt, get his guard back, get his legs back in here. So as soon as I flip him, I like to go ahead and immediately kind of get into a sprawl position here, and then start spinning, and then start working to make something happen. Grabbing an arm, grabbing a lapel, starting to work for some type of turnover, some type of choke, some type of finish. And so again, that's what we're going to want to see on your promotion test, that you stack and flip and immediately get on them. You need to know what it is you're going to do. Stack and flip and what you're going to finish with. Okay, it's not enough. I see a lot of people do that. They do a stack and flip, and you can tell they know that technique, but then they just kind of have no idea. They don't know what to do with it after that. So make sure you have an end game in mind when you do that technique. All right, next one we call the De La Riva leg split to a back take. So this takes place when the person is in a standing and open guard situation, and we're going to have our outside leg, our left leg, hooked on the outside of theirs. It's kind of the start of what in Japanese styles we would call an ashigarami. In BJJ it's commonly called a De La Riva. This is not exactly that, but it's very similar to that. So I'm going to have Coach Jordan here. You can do this from a variety of starting positions. So I could just be here and here. I could be controlling both of his sleeves, kind of a spider guard situation. I like to do what we call a misery guard. So I've got 2-on-1, and I've got this into his arm and this into his hip, like that. So what I'm going to do is bring my right arm off of his elbow, put it on his inner thigh and hip area. And then I'm going to let this left leg drop. It's going to hook outside and in. Now some people like to hook and touch the opposite leg, which is great. I like to hook a little shallower and put the top of my foot inside this thigh. It's really just personal preference. It's whatever works for you. If I was doing the full De La Riva, I would then also grab here, the back of this heel. In this case, I'm just going to hold the sleeve for this particular finish. Now I'm going to use my grips on him to bring him just slightly forward, to take some of the weight off his back leg. And this foot comes down onto his thigh, between his knee and his hip. And I'm going to push that leg backwards and put him into kind of a split position here, just like that. And I'm going to keep pulling this arm a bit, but now what I want to do is transition it to the front so I can start hopping over here and start working to take his back. Now, of course, from this position, it's kind of your choice what you want to do. Choke, arm bar, turn him over and pin him, whatever you would like. Let's see that with you right here. Coach Jordan, please. All right, so starting here, so switch to control. Outside leg hook, bring his weight up, kick him out, pop right up on top. Okay. There's a lot of other things we can do from there, like go right into Jujigatami. In this case, we're using it to take it back. All right, next technique, last one for this set actually, it's going to be the arm lasso sweep using the hooked flip. So this is when my opponent's on his knees in my guard, and I'm using what we call the arm lasso. So, got him here and here. I'm going to use my left foot on his hip, and I'm going to shrimp out and make a little space. So I go here, and as I shrimp out, I kind of turn to my left side. Now my right leg goes up, and it goes over the arm. And this time I'm going to let it actually dive all the way down. I'm going to move my left foot just so you can see. This foot is actually going to hook here on the inside of his thigh, just like that. It'll be kind of hard to see that because of where my left foot is at. So as soon as that foot hooks, now I've got to make my transition. So I'm going to stomp the mat with my left foot as I roll to the side, pull, and I'm going to use that to flip him right over. Now you could simply kick this arm free, use this to help control and pull, and sit up all the way over into a pin. And if you do that for your promotion, you're going to be all fine. It's perfect. It's exactly what I want to see. There are also options there to go into Jujigatami. There's options there to go into an elbow wedge or bicep crush. But again, if you just go into the pin, you'll make me very happy and you'll pass your test for your next rank. So let's see that one more time, kind of at this angle right here. So control, dive through. Remember, take this to the side. I'm not trying to flip him over my head, okay? Taking him at an angle off to the side like that. And I had him here and here, kick this leg out of the way, fold right into here. And we've got the point for the sweep, and now we're in a pin if we're working freestyle judo. All right, guys, so that should conclude all the mat work for semester 5 for our adult judo curriculum.